I had no idea that returning to school would take me down a path filled with secrets and forbidden emotions. I was anxious to learn more about Renaissance paintings and antique sculptures. So at the age of 24, I went back to school in Paris to finish my degree in art history. I took the choice to improve my future and pursue a career that matched my interests. However, I never imagined that I would encounter an unforeseen temptation while studying. Renowned for his fascinating lectures and keen intelligence, Professor Laurent was one of the department's most esteemed professors. His rough charm set him apart from the other academics, and he was in his early 40s. He was hard to overlook because of his deep-set eyes, salt and pepper hair, and the passionate manner he spoke art. His sincere concern for his students, however, was what truly made him stand out. He was the type of instructor who made you feel like your voice mattered, remembered everyone's name, and lingered after class to answer questions. I had admired him from afar for the first few weeks of the semester, always sitting in the back row, listening intently as he brought art to life with his words. But it wasn't until he assigned a major project that required individual meetings that I found myself in his office, alone with the man who had unknowingly captured my attention. The office was lined with bookshelves filled with art history texts, old journals, and artifacts from his travels. The walls were adorned with framed sketches and paintings, some of which he had done himself, I later learned. It was a small, cozy space that smelled faintly of old paper and coffee, and I felt a flutter of nerves as I stepped inside. "Camille, right?" he said, looking up from his desk with a warm smile. "Come in, have a seat." "Yes, that's right," I replied, feeling my cheeks warm under his gaze. "Thank you for meeting with me, Professor." "Please, call me Laurent," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Now tell me about your project. What's your focus?" I launched into my explanation, detailing my chosen topic on the influence of Greek mythology in Renaissance art. He listened intently, nodding occasionally and offering thoughtful feedback. I found myself relaxing as we discussed my ideas, the conversation flowing easily, as if we were old friends rather than student and professor. "You've chosen a fascinating topic," he said after a while, his eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. "The connections between myth and art are deep and complex. I'm excited to see where you take this." "Thank you," I said, feeling a swell of pride. "I'm really passionate about it." "It shows," he replied, his gaze lingering on me for a moment longer than necessary. "You have a unique perspective, Camille. Don't be afraid to explore it fully." We spent the next hour delving deeper into my project, but as the meeting came to an end, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more in the air, something unspoken. Laurent walked me to the door, his hand briefly brushing my arm as he said goodbye, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. "Good luck with your research," he said, his voice soft. "And don't hesitate to reach out if you need any guidance." "I will," I promised, my heart racing as I left his office. The following weeks were a blur of research and writing, but I found myself thinking about Laurent more often than I should have. His feedback had given me a newfound confidence in my work, and I started to look forward to his lectures even more, my eyes always drifting to him as he spoke. Then, one afternoon after class, Laurent approached me as I was packing up my things. "Camille, do you have a moment?" he asked, his tone casual, but with an undercurrent of something more. "Of course," I said, trying to hide the excitement in my voice. He gestured for me to follow him, and we made our way to a quiet corner of the courtyard, away from the bustle of students. I could feel my pulse quicken, the anticipation building with every step. "I wanted to talk to you about your project," he began, leaning against the stone wall. "You're doing exceptional work, Camille. Truly. But I also noticed that you seem distracted lately. Is everything all right?" His question caught me off guard, and I felt a rush of embarrassment. Was it that obvious? I had tried to be discreet, to keep my feelings to myself, but apparently I hadn't been as subtle as I thought. "I'm fine," I said quickly, though my voice wavered. "Just trying to keep up with everything, I guess." Laurent nodded, his gaze searching mine. "I understand. University can be overwhelming, but if there's anything you need, anything at all, you can always talk to me." There was a sincerity in his eyes that made my heart ache, and for a moment, I considered telling him the truth. about how I had been struggling to keep my emotions in check, how I couldn't stop thinking about him. But I held back, unsure of how he would react, or if it was even appropriate. "Thank you, Professor," I said instead, forcing a smile. "I appreciate that." He returned my smile, though there was a hint of something deeper in his expression. "Take care, Camille, and remember, you're not alone." As he walked away, I felt a mix of relief and longing. I knew I should be grateful for his kindness, but it only made my feelings for him grow stronger. I tried to focus on my studies, to bury myself in my work, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get Laurent out of my mind. A few days later, I found myself outside his office once again. I had told myself it was to ask a question about my project, but deep down, I knew it was just an excuse to see him. I knocked on the door and he called for me to come in, his face lighting up when he saw me. "Camille, what a nice surprise," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "What can I do for you?" I hesitated, suddenly feeling foolish. "I had a question about the essay portion of the project," I said, though my voice lacked conviction. "But I think I've got it under control now." Laurent raised an eyebrow, his expression amused. "Are you sure? You came all this way just to tell me that?" I laughed nervously, shrugging. "I guess I just wanted to make sure I was on the right track." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with a thoughtful expression. "Camille, you're doing more than fine. You're one of the best students I've had in a long time. I'm not worried about you." His words made my heart swell, and I felt a warmth spread through me. "Thank you, that means a lot." It was a pause, a lingering silence that felt charged with unspoken words. I could feel the tension building, the air between us thick with something unnameable. "Laurent," I began, my voice barely above a whisper. But I didn't get to finish. Before I knew what was happening, Laurent stood up and crossed the room, his movements swift and deliberate. He stopped in front of me, his gaze intense, and for a moment I thought he was going to tell me to leave, to put an end to whatever this was. Instead, he reached out and gently cupped my face in his hands, his touch sending a jolt of electricity through me. "Camille," he said softly, his voice filled with emotion. "I can't pretend anymore." I stared up at him, my heart racing. "What do you mean?" "I've tried to ignore it," he continued, his thumb brushing lightly against my cheek. "But I can't stop thinking about you. You're all I think about." My breath caught in my throat, and I felt a rush of emotions: fear, excitement, longing. I knew this was wrong, knew that there were boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. But the truth was, I felt the same way. I had been trying to deny it, to push it away, but there was no denying the connection between us. "Laurent, we can't," I whispered, though my resolve was crumbling. "You're my professor." "I know," he replied, his voice filled with regret. "And I've tried to keep my distance, to be professional. But it's too late. I care about you, Camille, more than I should." I closed my eyes, leaning into his touch, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. I knew the risks, knew the consequences, but I couldn't bring myself to pull away. "Camille," he murmured, his lips so close to mine that I could feel his breath. "Tell me to stop, and I will. But if you feel the same way—" I opened my eyes, meeting his gaze with a mixture of fear and desire. I knew I should tell him to stop, to put an end to this before it went too far. But I couldn't. The pull was too strong, the temptation too great. "I don't want you to stop," I confessed, my voice trembling. And that was all it took. Laurent leaned in, capturing my lips in a gentle, lingering kiss that sent shivers down my spine. It was soft, hesitant, as if giving me a chance to change my mind. But I didn't. I kissed him back, my hands tangling in his hair as I surrendered to the moment. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were breathing heavily, our foreheads resting against each other. "This is crazy," I whispered, my voice filled with both fear and excitement. "What are we doing?" "I don't know," Laurent admitted, his thumb gently stroking my cheek. "But I don't want to stop." We stood there for a moment, caught between what we knew was right and what we wanted. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I knew we were crossing a line, that there would be consequences, but I couldn't bring myself to walk away. "We have to be careful," I said finally, my voice shaky. "We can't let anyone find out." Laurent nodded, his expression serious. "I know, we'll keep it quiet. Just let's take it one step at a time." And that was how it began. What started as stolen glances and secret meetings soon turned into late nights in his office, whispered conversations in empty hallways, and moments of passion that we tried to keep hidden. It was thrilling and terrifying all at once, and I couldn't get enough. But as the weeks went on, the reality of our situation began to sink in. The secrecy, the constant fear of being caught, it was starting to take its toll. I found myself torn between my feelings for Laurent and the knowledge that what we were doing was wrong. I knew I was risking everything, my education, his career, but I couldn't bring myself to end it. Then, one evening after class, Laurent asked me to meet him in his office. I could sense the tension in his voice, and I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach as I made my way there. When I arrived, he was pacing the small space, his expression troubled. "Laurent, what's wrong?" I asked, my heart racing. He stopped and looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and regret. "Camille, we need to talk." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What is it?" He took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair. "Someone saw us the other day, one of the other professors. I've tried to downplay it, but, Camille, I'm scared. This could ruin everything." My mind raced as I processed his words. The fear of being exposed had always been there, lurking in the back of my mind, but hearing it spoken aloud made it all too real. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice trembling.